She could hold a broken kid in her arms and whisper that he mattered, but she could never do that for her own son. My name is Eric West. I'm 17 years old, and for as long as I can remember, my world's been shaped by one person, my mother, Amelia West. She's not a warm woman, not unkind, exactly, but clinical, precise. A paramedic with the emergency service, and someone so honed by trauma and time that I don't think she even feels the world like most people do anymore. My father died when I was 7, heart attack, sudden. I remember the noise of the sirens more than the man. After that, it was just me and her. She became a clock, always ticking, always functioning. Get up at 5:30, run 4 miles, scrambled eggs, 2 pieces of toast, no butter, a single black coffee, every day the same. There was no room for chaos, or softness, or error. In her words, be early or be dead. That's what she told me once, when I missed the school bus in 6th grade because I forgot to set my alarm. I was 10 minutes late. She made me walk to school, in the rain. I didn't question it much when I was younger. It's all I knew. She kept me alive, fed me, clothed me, drilled my homework into my skull. But it wasn't love. I didn't have the word for it back then, but I knew something was missing. The way she looked at me, like a checklist, she was constantly scanning for errors. No hugs, no bedtime stories. If I scraped my knee, she'd assess the wound and clean it, then move on. Efficient, clean, indifferent. I remember once, in 3rd grade, I got punched by another kid. Bloody nose, split lip, the whole deal. When the school called her, she didn't yell or cry. She showed up, checked me over like I was just another patient, and said, "You should have blocked." That was it. No comfort, no anger, just clinical feedback. I sat in the back seat of her car on the ride home, holding tissues to my nose, and listened to the traffic. She didn't speak the whole way. People used to tell me how lucky I was to have a strong mother. That word, strong, it made me sick after a while. Yeah, she was strong. Like concrete. Cold, hard, unbending. You can build on concrete, but you don't touch it. You don't feel warm around it. It doesn't yield, and it sure as hell doesn't care if you're scared or hurt or just need someone to tell you it's going to be okay. She always showed up. Parent-teacher conferences, recitals, doctor appointments. She was never absent. But presence doesn't mean connection. She was there, sure, sitting in the front row at every school play, arms crossed, her face unreadable. I don't think she's ever clapped for anything in her life. Once, when I was 13, I had this stomach bug. Couldn't stop vomiting. I was curled up on the bathroom floor, sweating through my shirt, crying because I thought I was dying. She walked in, crouched down next to me, held my wrist to check my pulse, and said, "You're not dying. You're dehydrated." Then she left the room and came back with a packet of electrolytes and a wet cloth. Not a hug, not a kind word, just functionality. I didn't hate her. I want to be clear about that. I never hated her. I just didn't understand if I mattered. Not as a task or a responsibility, but as a person, a son. I wondered sometimes what would happen if I ran away. Would she call the police? Would she look for me? Or would she just mark it as a deviation in the system, a variable she failed to account for? Sometimes I try little things. Leave my backpack in the hallway instead of the rack. Say I didn't feel like dinner. Skip brushing my teeth, just to see if she'd notice. She always noticed. But not like you'd think. Not like a mom noticing her kid was off. More like a soldier noticing their gun was jammed. She'd fix it. Reset the system. Tell me, you don't get to be lazy. You don't get to be soft. That's how people die. I never brought friends home. I didn't want them to see how weird it was. How quiet our house was. Everything spotless. Books lined up alphabetically. No photos. No laughter. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of her breathing through her nose as she read medical journals at the table. The only picture of my dad was in a drawer in her desk. I found it by accident one summer while looking for a pen. I asked her about it. She said, "He was a good man. Let's not dwell on the past." That was the longest sentence she'd said about him in 10 years. I guess the worst part was how normal I thought it all was for a long time. I figured this was just what having a parent was like. People talked about love and affection and bonding, and I assumed they were exaggerating. Or lying. It wasn't until I was 15 and spent the night at a friend's house that I realized how wrong I was. His mom made pancakes the next morning, called him sweetheart, ruffled his hair, told him she was proud of him for passing math. I watched like I was at a zoo exhibit, studying a creature I didn't recognize. When she smiled at me and said, "Eric, you want chocolate chips in yours?" I almost started crying. I didn't even like pancakes. But I said yes, because her voice was warm and her eyes were kind, and I didn't want it to end. That's when it hit me. I'd spent my whole life being kept alive by a woman who treated me like a duty, a responsibility, a patient, not a son. I was never afraid, because she was always there. But I was never loved. Not in a way that mattered. Not in a way that felt human. I still live with her. I graduate next year. I've already applied to colleges in other states. Far away. I don't know if she'll notice when I'm gone. Maybe she'll just reset the alarm, make her coffee, and move on. But me, I'm going to remember. I'm going to remember every time I got sick and she didn't hold me. Every time I cried and she walked away. Every time I tried to be a kid and she told me survival didn't leave room for weakness. She is the woman of concrete. And I was raised in the cold. That day was supposed to feel like something. Not just for me, though God knows I needed a win, but for us. I'd been waiting for the email all morning, refreshing the admissions portal like some idiot trying to will the answer into existence with just sheer nervous energy. And then there it was. Full ride. The Film Academy in Seattle. The place I'd been dreaming about since sophomore year. Ever since Mr. Bell lent me his old Canon and told me my short film didn't suck. I sat on my bed with my laptop on my thighs and just stared at the screen for a full minute, feeling like maybe this time, maybe finally, something was going to change. I closed the lid and walked down the hall to the kitchen where she was sorting the laundry with her back to me. I said it straight out, not dramatic, not fishing for anything. Just, I got the scholarship. She didn't turn around. She kept folding a faded blue towel and said, "Is it enough for you to live on?" No smile. No well done. No goddamn hug. Just the question, like it was a transaction she needed clarity on. Something snapped in me. The kind of snap that doesn't come from one moment, but from thousands of little cuts that finally dig too deep. I said, louder than I meant to, "Have you ever been proud of me at all?" I wasn't crying, not really. Not yet. But my voice cracked right down the middle, like it didn't know if it should shout or just break. She didn't flinch. She just placed the towel down and looked over her shoulder with that same flat calm she always wore, like emotions were something she dissected once in training and filed away under non-essential. "I am not for pride," she said. "I'm here to survive." That was it. No more, no less. Then she grabbed her coat, checked her keys, and left for her night shift. No goodbye, no look back. I stood there in the kitchen long after the door closed. The smell of detergent and old radiator heat hanging in the air, the ceiling light flickering just enough to feel like something out of a bad indie film. It didn't hit all at once. It crept in like cold air under a door. The ache, the hollow, the weight of it all. The finality. That night I packed my things. Not in a rush, not like I was running away. More like I was completing a ritual, some half-dead ceremony that had been waiting for me for years. A backpack, a duffel, the acceptance email printed out and tucked into a manila folder, like maybe if I held it in paper, it would feel real. I should have gone to the train station. I should have gotten on the 1142 heading north and never looked back. But I didn't. Instead, I walked. Past the corner store, past the frozen park benches, past the house with the stupid inflatable owl on the porch that nobody ever took down. My legs knew where I was going before my brain did. The old school gym. The place I used to sneak into after hours with Marcus and Reed back in freshman year, when the janitor left the window cracked, and we thought being up on the bleachers made us invisible. That gym was the only place I ever felt like someone might be watching. Not in a creepy way, but like someone might actually see me. Not the kid of Amelia West. Not the quiet one. Just me. The building was locked, of course. They fixed the window last year. But the light above the entrance was still busted, and the side door sometimes gave if you leaned on it just right. I stood there in the dark, my duffel at my feet, the winter air chewing through my jacket, and tried the handle. It gave. Inside, the silence hit like a wave. Big and warm, and thick with memories. The gym smelled like old sweat and varnished wood and cheap plastic from the folded-up bleachers. I sat in the same spot I always did, top row, right side, 2 seats in, and just existed. I don't know for how long. Long enough for my fingers to go numb. Long enough for the ache in my throat to settle into something dull and heavy. I thought about what she said. "I am not for pride. I'm here to survive." It sounded noble, in a way, like something someone might say in a movie before they sacrifice themselves for the greater good. But it wasn't noble. It was just cold. Just her way of saying love wasn't on the menu. Never had been. I didn't cry. I thought I might, but I didn't. Maybe because I knew there was nothing left to cry about. She was gone, and she hadn't even looked back. And I had a future. A chance. A school that wanted me. A place I could belong. Maybe, if I didn't mess it up. But in that moment, all I wanted was to be seen. To be told I mattered. Just once. I sat there until the sun started bleeding through the high windows, coloring the gym floor in streaks of pale orange and gold. My breath came in clouds. My phone buzzed once. Probably Marcus, but I didn't check it. I wasn't ready to leave yet. I wasn't ready to go anywhere. Because before I could start something new, I had to let this end. And that meant sitting in the silence, in the cold, in the place where at least once, someone had looked at me and said, "You're good at this." That's all I ever wanted, really. Not praise. Not pride. just proof that I existed beyond her survival plan, that I was more than something she had to maintain. And in that gym, for a few hours at least, I could pretend it had all been different, that someone had stayed, that someone had seen me, that I was enough. It was maybe 4 days later when I overheard someone mention her name in passing. I wasn't even trying to eavesdrop. It just floated into my ears while I was standing in line for coffee at the strip mall near the bus stop. Two women, probably in their 40s, standing behind me talking about volunteer shifts at some center downtown. One of them said, "Amelia's there on Thursdays. She's so good with the kids," like it was the most natural thing in the world. I thought I misheard. Amelia, my mother, good with kids. I didn't say anything. I didn't turn around. I just let the words sit there, low and warm in my gut, like a drink I hadn't meant to take. The women kept talking, something about snack rotations and toy donations, but I wasn't hearing them anymore. My brain was spinning hard, trying to align two images that didn't belong in the same timeline. Amelia West, the woman who rationed affection like it was oxygen in a burning building. Volunteering. With children. Being good with them. It made no sense. She wasn't a volunteer. She was a robot in human skin. Built for schedules, not sentiment. I walked back to my place without drinking the coffee. Sat on my bed. Stared at the ceiling. Something about the way they'd said her name, like she was part of something soft, made my skin itch. I told myself it was probably another woman with the same name. Amelia's not exactly rare. There had to be hundreds of them. But that wasn't it. Something in me knew. The kind of knowing that doesn't come with facts or logic. Just that sick, cold certainty you feel when you realize a door's been cracked open behind you, and you never even noticed it. So I went. The next Thursday, I looked up the place, a nonprofit center on the edge of downtown. Tired gray building, faded mural on the side, lot of chalk drawings on the sidewalk. I didn't even know what I expected to find. Maybe I thought I'd walk in and see someone else. Someone who looked like her from a distance, and I'd laugh at myself for being so dramatic. Maybe I wanted to prove she couldn't do softness, not even in disguise. The receptionist barely glanced up when I pushed through the front door. It smelled like glue sticks and peanut butter and industrial hand soap. I told her I was looking for a volunteer named Amelia West, that I was supposed to drop something off. She waved toward the back hall. End of the corridor. Last room on the left. I walked slow. My stomach felt like I'd swallowed a rock. The hallway was lined with kids' drawings taped to the walls. Messy rainbows, stick figure families, suns with giant smiles, and 15 rays. All the stuff that had never been on our fridge. The door was open a crack. I stood outside for a second. Then I looked. She was in the middle of the room, surrounded by kids. Maybe 10, maybe more. The kind of loose chaos that makes most adults edgy. But not her. She was crouched down, holding this little boy who couldn't have been older than 5. He was crying, face buried in her shoulder, making these soft hiccuping sounds that hit me right in the chest. And she, my mother, Amelia West, the woman of concrete, she was rocking him gently. Not rushing, not correcting, just slow, steady movement. One hand on his back, the other stroking his hair. She bent her head and kissed the top of his head like it was the most natural thing in the world. She whispered something into his ear. He clung to her like she was safety itself. I didn't move. I couldn't. I stood there with my hand on the doorframe, watching her be someone I had never met. It was like staring at a photograph from another dimension. Same face, same posture, same hands, but different soul. She knew what tenderness looked like. She had it in her. The whole time. She just never gave it to me. She smiled at one of the other kids who came over with a book. The kind of smile I'd always thought she didn't have. Soft around the eyes, warm at the edges. And I realized then, it wasn't that she couldn't be gentle. It was that she chose not to be. Not with me. I stepped back before she could see me. I walked out without speaking to anyone. I didn't take the bus. I walked all the way home. 30 blocks. Past storefronts, past crosswalks, past kids playing with half-deflated balls in empty lots. The wind stung my face, but I didn't really feel it. That night I didn't eat. I didn't turn on the lights. I just lay on my bed in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd ever understand what made me different, what made me invisible, and why it was so easy for her to give what I needed, just not to me. His name was Travel. I thought it was a joke the first time I heard it, like maybe he picked it out of a book, or someone misheard Trevor. But no, that was really his name. Travel. 5 years old. A skinny little kid with big dark eyes that looked like they'd seen too much and understood even more. He always wore this green jacket that was missing half its buttons, except for the one my mother sewed back on for him. I saw her do it with my own eyes. Sat him down on a plastic chair, threaded the needle, and stitched it up like it was the most natural thing in the world. I remember standing there by the doorway, half hidden behind the frame, watching her crouch beside him with her brow furrowed in gentle concentration, her fingers moving fast and sure the way they did when she worked a bandage or tied off a tourniquet. Only this time, It wasn't survival. It was care. For him. Travel's mother was a mess. I only heard pieces, that she was in and out of rehab, lived 3 bus stops away in some halfway shelter, sometimes forgot to pick him up, sometimes didn't come at all. No one ever said it out loud, but the staff at the center seemed to orbit around him a little closer than the other kids, like they were all bracing for a call that hadn't come yet. But my mother, she locked onto him like he was her mission. I watched her pack crackers into a zip bag for him to take home. I watched her kneel down to retie his shoes. I watched her rub circles on his back when he sat silent in a corner for 20 minutes without saying a word. She'd lean in close, brush his hair behind his ear, and murmur things I wasn't supposed to hear. Except one day I did. I came by the center again, not even sure why at that point. Some part of me kept returning, like maybe the next time she'd notice me standing there. Maybe she'd acknowledge that I'd seen her become a person she never was with me. I stood just outside the room again. Same spot as before, same stale smell of paper glue and graham crackers. And I saw her. She was sitting on the floor, Travel tucked into her side, his head resting against her ribs like he belonged there. She held him with one arm wrapped around his small body, the other hand smoothing down his hair. He was crying. Softly, almost silently, his face hidden in her sweater. And she said it. Clear, low, and so tender it felt like the air got punched out of my chest. "You are my brave boy," she whispered. "I'm here." I didn't move. I couldn't. My ears rang with it, like a scream in reverse. My chest thudded so hard I thought it might crack open. The words looped over and over again in my skull until I couldn't tell if I was hearing them or remembering them or just hallucinating out of desperation. "You are my brave boy. I'm here." And inside my head, louder than anything else, I was screaming. Why not me? Why the hell not me? Why him? Why does he get the arms, the softness, the warmth? Why does he get the buttons sewn and the crackers packed and the steady voice in his ear saying you matter, you're safe? I'm here. Why didn't I? And then the worst thought hit me, the one that made everything collapse in on itself. I realized I was competing for something that was supposed to be mine. Something I thought I had given up trying to win, but deep down I was still chasing like a starving animal. Motherhood. Not in the vague sentimental way people use in poems or Hallmark cards, but in the real, gut-wrenching, skin-hungry way. I wanted her to be mine, the way she was his. But I was losing. To a child who needed her, a child who deserved her, a child who had done nothing wrong but simply existed in the right place at the right time. And I was furious. Not at him, never at him, but at her, at the universe, at whatever cruel machinery had wired her to open up for strangers and shut down for blood. I left before she looked up, walked fast, didn't care where I went, just needed to move, to bleed some of the heat out of my bones before I imploded. I made it 2 blocks before I sat down on a bus bench and buried my face in my hands. I wasn't crying. Not exactly. But something inside me was caving in. The kind of collapse that doesn't make noise. The kind that leaves a hollow space where trust used to live. She had it in her the whole time. She knew how to hold, how to soothe, how to say the right thing to a hurting child. She just didn't choose me. And now I was watching her give it to someone else, someone small and broken and innocent. And it made me feel like I'd been erased. Like I was never real to her at all. She came outside and saw me there, next to the trash can, standing like a kicked dog in the middle of the yard we never used. The sun had already gone down, and the air was still, thick with the smell of cut grass and something sour from the dumpsters. My chest was heaving, but I hadn't been running. I was just breathing like I couldn't figure out how to do it right anymore. My hands were shaking. I kept them in my pockets so she wouldn't see. She didn't speak at first, just walked to the edge of the concrete, looked up at the sky like she was checking for rain that wasn't coming. I didn't say anything. I didn't even look at her. I was too full. Of anger. Of grief. Of all the words I had never dared say out loud. The silence between us stretched thin, like plastic about to tear. Then, like she had to rip it out of herself, she said, "You know that I also had wounds." I was afraid too. I didn't move. I didn't nod. I didn't even blink. But the words sank into me, slow and heavy, like stones dropped into water. She didn't go on right away. She just stood there, hands folded in front of her like she was holding something fragile. Her eyes were on the ground now, her mouth tight, like she was chewing glass. She didn't look like a mother. She looked like someone about to testify in court, like a witness unsure if she was the victim or the perpetrator. Finally, she said it. Quiet, almost ashamed. I didn't know how to be gentle because I wasn't taught that way. I only know how to save. I'd waited years to hear something real from her. Something that wasn't about timetables or performance or outcomes. And it came out like that. Unfinished, flat, stripped of all the emotion it was supposed to carry. But it still hit. Because even though she said it like a confession, it felt like an excuse. like she was drawing a chalk line around herself and saying, "This is all I can be." And something inside me snapped. I turned to face her. Really face her. My voice was raw when it came out, cracked and torn from too many years of silence. "Then save me," I said. Not as a paramedic. As a mother. She didn't respond. Didn't step closer. Just stood there, like I had asked her to lift a mountain with her bare hands. Her eyes flicked up, met mine for the briefest second, then dropped again. The wind picked up. It rustled the trees and stirred the trash at our feet. I could hear the faint hum of traffic from a block away. The world didn't stop. It never does. But for a second, everything felt suspended, like even the air was holding its breath, waiting for her to do something. Say something. Anything. She didn't. And I stood there, next to a garbage can in a yard that had never held a single memory, breathing like I was about to fall apart. I started showing up at the center more. At first, I didn't even try to hide it. I came for her. I lingered in doorways, offered to carry supply boxes, asked if they needed an extra set of hands, even though I had no experience, no training, no plan. I just wanted to be where she was, to see if maybe standing in her orbit long enough would warm the parts of me she'd always left cold. But it didn't take long for that to shift. It was travel. He was the one who made me stay. The second time I came, he ran up to me with this crumpled drawing in his fist, two lopsided stick figures holding hands under a red scribbled sun. "It's you," he said, tapping one figure. "And me." The paper was torn at the edge and stained in one corner, probably juice or glue or both. I still have it, folded in the back of a book I pretend I'm reading. We started spending time together without really deciding to. I helped him with art projects, showed him how to cut shapes out of construction paper without folding it first, taught him how to hold scissors without slicing his sleeve. We made paper rockets out of old toilet rolls and plastic wrap, tried to launch them off the chairs. We built cities out of blocks and gave them ridiculous names like Jellybean Tower and Pizza Town. On rainy afternoons, we played shadows and light, using a flashlight and our hands to create whole worlds on the yellow walls of the playroom. He started reaching for my hand without asking, crawling into my lap when he got tired, leaning against me like I was already something solid in his life. It caught me off guard at first, the way he trusted without question, but I let it happen. And somewhere in the middle of it, I realized something inside me was changing. Not all at once, not like a switch flipping on, but gradually, like torn fabric being stitched up from the inside out. Sometimes I'd look up and see her watching us. My mother, sitting across the room, folding towels or sorting markers, or just standing in the doorway like she'd wandered in by accident. Sometimes she smiled. Not the tight, formal smile she gave strangers. Something softer, smaller. Other times she didn't smile at all. Just looked, her eyes unreadable, her shoulders drawn up like she was waiting for a signal to exhale. But even then, I could tell something was shifting in her too. It wasn't big. It wasn't dramatic. Just little things. The way her hands moved when she fixed a backpack strap. The way her voice softened slightly when she said someone's name. The way she paused when travel reached for her and let herself be pulled into his orbit without flinching. She still didn't say much. Not to me. But her breathing was different. I don't know how else to explain it. There's this way people breathe when they're carrying too much, shallow, tight, like they're bracing for impact. I'd grown up listening to that breath, recognizing it before I could name it. But now, sometimes, I'd hear it slow down, deepen, like a body coming out of shock, like someone remembering what it feels like to live, not just survive. I didn't say any of this out loud. I just kept coming back. Not for her, for him. Because when he laughed, I laughed. When he cried, I stayed. And every time he called my name like it meant something, like I was already part of his small, fractured world, I felt something inside me anchor for the first time in years. And in the quiet corners of that center, beneath peeling posters and faded paint, surrounded by paper rockets and broken crayons, I started to feel like maybe I wasn't losing anymore. Maybe I was becoming something else, something new, something whole. They called it Family Day, though no one really defined what that meant. Parents, guardians, mentors, foster volunteers, anyone the kids wanted to bring. The center had folded paper signs taped to tables, juice boxes stacked in crates, and a woman with a shaky voice trying to keep the mic from feeding back. The walls were covered in the kids' drawings, crooked lines, and glitter-glued shapes and neon crayon dreams. The kind of mess that felt honest. Travel tugged my hand as soon as I walked in. His fingers wrapped around mine, small and sticky with something sweet. "Come see," he said, already pulling me past the juice, the noise, the clusters of nervous adults pretending not to be nervous. He led me to the far wall where the bigger drawings were displayed. There, in the center of it all, taped low to the wall so the little ones could reach, was his picture. He had drawn us. A big blocky house. A yellow sun with 6 long rays. Stick figures with oversized heads and lopsided smiles. Me on the left, red heart on my chest, arms stretched out like I was holding up the whole thing. Him in the middle, wearing a green jacket. And her, my mother, on the right, with her hair drawn dark and neat, a purple triangle for a dress, one hand resting on Travel's head. He looked up at me, grinning so hard his eyes squinted. "This is my mom," he said, pointing. Then, with even more certainty, "And my brother." I didn't know how to respond. I just nodded, swallowed hard, tried to smile without cracking anything open. He had called me that before, once or twice in passing, but here, in front of everyone, it landed differently. It hit like a small earthquake under my ribs. I turned to say something, but my mother was already there. She had come in quietly, the way she always did, not drawing attention, not taking up space. She stood next to me now, looking at the drawing, her arms folded, not defensive, just her usual stance when she didn't know what to do with them. Her face was unreadable for a moment, the way it always was when she was calculating blood loss or waiting for vitals to stabilize. But then something shifted. Her shoulders lowered a little. Her breath came out slower than usual. And she turned to me. She leaned in close, her voice low enough that only I could hear it, and said, "I'm proud of what you've become for him." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. It was the first time I had ever heard her say those words. Not in a performance review tone, not dressed up in clinical detachment, not framed as some logical conclusion to a list of accomplishments. Just soft, human, a mother speaking to her son. My throat tightened so fast I couldn't get a sound out. I nodded, once, because if I tried to speak, I knew I'd lose it. I kept my eyes on the drawing because it was safer than looking at her, but I could feel her still beside me, like a presence I hadn't believed in for a long time was suddenly real. That moment, small, quiet, tucked into the corner of a noisy room filled with paper cups and glue and badly tuned microphones, was the one that almost broke me. Because for once, there was no armor, no cold, no protocol, just her, just me, and something that felt, finally, like love. The morning I left for Seattle, the house was still. No footsteps, no voice from the other room asking if I had everything. No goodbye at the door. I wasn't surprised. I had packed quietly the night before, not expecting a send-off. That was never her way. Still, part of me had hoped. The kitchen light was off, but when I stepped in, I saw it. A thermos on the stove, cap sealed tight, still warm when I picked it up. Next to it, a note folded neatly in her exact, even handwriting. It didn't say much. Just, "Leave a message when you get there. Travel was wondering when you'd be back." That's all. It wasn't an "I love you." It wasn't a hug at the door, or a hand on my shoulder, or a look that lingered too long. But it was something else. Something permanent. Something that said without saying, "I'm still here. I'm not going anywhere. I will be waiting." That note hit me harder than anything else she could have written. Not because of what it said, but because of who it came from. From a woman who never spoke words, who never learned to cradle without holding, who put her love into actions too small to be noticed unless you look closely. Tea is on the stove. The button is sewn on tight. A child's name memorized. That was enough. In that moment, I finally understood. Her speech was never soft syllables or open arms. Her love did not carry itself outward. It moved under the surface, quiet and constant, like a stream. And for the first time, not out of obligation, not because of some broken sense of responsibility, she chose me. She did not hug me, but she made sure that I did not leave empty-handed. And that, somehow, meant more. Thank you for reading this far. I know that this is not a story of loud declarations or neat resolutions.